You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin'.
You mean shiny.
Shh. Wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo, that's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus content spread across all of ObsessiveViewer.com's various podcasts, including a deep dive into the Night Shift short story collection at the $2 level, and also a deep dive into Billy Summers. And I'm going to get back into doing book reactions, in particular like Stephen King book reactions. I also did a deep dive, part by part deep dive on The Green Mile on that. So all that's at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Check that out. So I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and joining me as usual via Google Meet over the internet now, not in the same room as usual, is Tiny. How's it going, Tiny?
Hey man, it's going really good. How you been?
Good. I've been good, as detailed in our Patreon recording, which at the $1 level we do kind of B-roll warm-up recordings. We kind of check in with each other, and sometimes we ask stupid questions and get stupid answers. But we kind of warm up and everything. But I detailed how over the last month I moved to a new apartment on a very different side of town of Indianapolis. And also I was involved in a car accident last week. So it's been an interesting month or so. So Tiny, since we now live considerably farther apart, because a peek behind the curtain, we have lived in Speedway or Speedway adjacent Indiana forever. And Tiny and I, when we would record, like Tiny lived, what would you say, like 2 minutes away from my apartment?
Yeah, not even a mile.
Yeah. So he would come over and record, but now you are like 29 minutes away.
Yeah.
So hopefully the sound quality is good. I think it sounds good in my ears, so I think we're good. We're set.
Cool.
Yeah. So Tiny, how's it going? By the way, listeners, today on the podcast we're going to be finally concluding our different seasons deep dive with a discussion about the final novella in the different seasons collection titled The Breathing Method. And we're also going to pair that with a brief conversation about a related short story from Stephen King's Skeleton Crew collection from 1985 called The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. But before we do all that, we're going to talk about Stephen King and both check-ins and news and everything. So Tiny, first of all, how is it going? How are you doing this evening? And then we can get into our check-ins and news.
I'm doing good, man. It's a bit of a busy, stressful week, but I'm excited to be back. We haven't done Tower Junkies in a while.
Yes. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and then I haven't recorded with you in general in like 4 or 5 weeks. So
yeah,
it's just been life gets in the way.
Yes, it really does. We're getting into car accidents. We're redoing doors and houses. Yeah. which that looks really good. For the listener, Tiny, did you just put new doors on? Did you paint the doors? Like, what was the process?
Yeah, like ripped out the old ones. Two of them, like our back door and our garage door. We just ripped them out and put in some brand new ones.
Nice.
Took it all the way down to the studs and put in a whole new frame and everything.
Nice.
Father-in-law helped me. So yeah, the old ones are just kind of like they were super old and like getting rotted and didn't look good. So yeah, we needed some new ones. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. It looks good and we're happy with it.
Nice. Sweet. Yeah. It looks good from the pictures you sent. So cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into some Stephen King news and check-ins. First, Tiny, do you have any Stephen King check-ins over the last several months?
I don't have Stephen King check-ins. I'm trying to think of what I was reading the last time we did an episode. I think I've read Carrie, but I don't remember if I had finished that since the last time we recorded or not.
I would say definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so that's the latest Stephen King thing I've read. Right now I'm reading a book called A Very Stable Genius. It's written by Philip Rucker and Carol Leonnig. They're Washington Post reporters. It's just about like the first 3 years of the Trump presidency. It's all like firsthand accounts of from like within his administration, and it is fully alarming and just I mean, I thought I couldn't be shocked by what happened in that administration anymore, but I have been so far. It's just amazing how incompetent he was. And he actually had a lot of talented people around him that maybe he didn't agree with politically, but at least they were people who knew what they were doing, and he just did not listen to them, and he was really horrible. And the book is like 95% of it is like critical of him. But it's amazing. It's a really good read so far. Nice. It's just like a straight narrative of like the first 3 years of his presidency. So
nice. It's
really good. But
nice. Yeah. Very Stable Genius. Donald J. Trump's Testing of America.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I saw in the related ones, they did a follow-up book called I Alone Can Fix It, Donald J. Trump's Catastrophic Final Year. Yeah, I just added both to my wish list. So
I'll have to read that one because I'm sure that involves like January 6th and everything.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking COVID.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So
where there was a couple of books that I want to say was it Carl Bernstein did?
Yeah. What is that one called?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking. I have it on my wish list.
Yeah. Or maybe it was Woodward.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah. I'm looking. Yeah, it was Woodward. He did 3 books about the Trump administration. The first one, I think it was the first one, was Rage, which I read. And I enjoyed it, or relatively speaking, enjoyed it.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think. No, I'm sorry. The first one was Fear: Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward. I read that one, and that was eye-opening and everything. And then Rage was the second one. That's the one that had the quote about. I think that was the one that had. Oh, that was the one where he talked about how like, oh yeah, he knew that it was that COVID was spread by air and like
right
and all that. But and then the final one that he did, which I haven't read, this one is Peril, which I think was about the transition from President Donald J. Trump to President Joseph R. Biden Jr. Stands as one and blah 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 blah. So yeah, I'm eager to listen to that one. But I am listening to I for my check-ins and everything. If you don't have anything else, do you?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so for my check-ins, I wanted to, first of all, I read The Green Mile, and on Patreon at the $2 level, like I said, I have a big recording of me talking about The Green Mile as I read it. So and this is such a nerdy, stupid thing, but so I had done this a while ago. So The Green Mile, it's a oh god, yeah, it's an almost 3-hour recording of
shit.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So I'm insane, and it's book reaction, The Green Mile, the complete serial novel by Stephen King. I recorded it from October 24th, 2021 to February 1st, 2022, and then February 1st is when I released it. And the way that I did it, since The Green Mile is a serial novel that was released in 6 parts, I read each part, and when I finished each part, I would stop and I would record my thoughts on it, on that specific part and what I think about and everything. Kind of the same thing I did with Billy Summers. And because I'm insane, I did each recording with a different mic setup, and just to see how it sounds in one kind of big thing. So yeah. Oh, no, on part 4, I used the mic that I sold, that I eventually sold. But anyway, so 6 parts, 6 different mic setups. It's all in the show notes and everything on it. But very proud of that. Very good book. Which we will be covering at some point in the course of our lives. But yeah, it was really good. Have you read The Green Mile?
I have not.
Okay. Have you've seen The Green Mile?
Yeah. Is it on my top 19 adaptations? Did I bring it up?
I
think I did.
Good question. I feel like you probably did.
Yeah, even though I haven't seen it in a long time, but because I remember really liking it. So
I remember I saw it in high school, and that's the only time I'd seen it really. So I need to rewatch it again. I have plans to do a commentary track for it, for Patreon that I'm actually going to do with my girlfriend Jess, eventually. And I really need to buckle down and do that, but But yeah, so I'm looking at the top 19 adaptations. The Green Mile is number 10 in the top 19.
Yep, number 10. I just looked it up too.
Nice. Which, by the way, guys, if you go to towerjunkieспod.com/top19, you'll see our top 19 novels and adaptations listed on the website. I've been doing that. I've been wanting to do that again with another Stephen King book, but I need to do that. I need to, obviously do that with the short fiction stuff and short fiction collections because I'd promised the Church of King thing and I only did Night Shift. So next up, that was a tricky thing for me because I had it all mapped out, and January was Night Shift, and then February was different seasons, but we covered different seasons and everything.
Right.
So I wanted, I need to now do, I think Skeleton Crew is next. Which, yeah, I will do that. I will definitely do that, I promise. But yeah, now that I'm getting back into the groove of recording regularly, I'm going to do that, also soon. But I also want to do that with another Stephen King book. I want to do part by part recordings because I really like doing that, and it gives me a kind of a sense of accountability to finish the book.
Right.
And everything. But anyway, other than that, I've been listening on Audible to this is tangentially related, sort of, it's media, but Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli, the epic story of the making of The Godfather by Mark Seal, which once I finish that, I'm going to do a book reaction recording on Patreon. And then this week, actually, on Paramount Plus, they are premiering The Offer, the limited series about the making of The Godfather, which I saw the trailer for it. It looks horrible. Like it does not look good.
Really?
Yeah, it looks awkward. Yeah. It's got like Miles Teller as one of the producers. Oh God, what is his name? Dan Fogelman? Is that his name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as Francis Ford Coppola, which he like Dead Ringer looks like it.
Yeah.
It looks like really great casting there. But yeah, so I might do like episode reviews of that on Patreon. But anyway, yeah, we're a Stephen King podcast. Let's talk about Stephen King. Yeah. Do you want to switch over to Stephen King news?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so obviously it's been a while since we have been on Tower Junkies, but so several news stuff has happened. But I'm going to go ahead and pick 4 news pieces for us to talk about a little bit. And I know that we've talked about these things, I think, on Messenger, but I'm curious which ones we have and haven't. But the first one comes from Variety. It is, I'll read the headline here. This is from March 29th. It is, oh, hang on, my phone is messing up. Okay. It prequel series in the works at HBO Max. Yeah, so the series currently called Welcome to Derry will begin in the 1960s in the time leading up to the events of It Part 1, the 2017 film based on the Stephen King horror novel. The story is also said to include the origin story of Pennywise the Clown. Andy Muschietti, who directed It Part 1 and It Part 2, is attached to executive produce the series along with Barbara Muschietti and Jason Fuchs. According to sources, the Muschiettis and Fuchs developed the story for the show, with Fuchs writing the script. Andy would also direct the first episode should the project go to series. Then a writer's room is now open. Warner Brothers Television is the studio behind the project, with WB having produced the 2 films. So, Tiny, how do you feel about Welcome to Derry, potential prequel series to It that uncovers the origin of Pennywise the Clown and the evil that lives within Derry?
Well, it sounds tricky to me, to be honest. I mean, obviously it's not like canon for the King world and for the whole It universe, I guess. But it got some good names attached. I mean, I like what, I like the production team. That's a good sign. HBO Max is a great place to get anything produced. So that's 2 good things in its category. But I feel like I don't really want to know the origin story of the Pennywise entity, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I feel like a peek behind the curtain is rarely as satisfying as you want it to be.
Right.
Leave an air of mystery, leave them wanting more, I guess, is typically the way to go. But it could be great. Well, we'll see. Yeah,
I'm on the fence about it also. I'm kind of frustrated by this news because for a couple of reasons. One is that I think Bad Robot was attached to make an Overlook series that was going to be basically one of my dream Stephen King television projects.
Did that fall through?
I think so. I think that's not going to happen anymore. But from what I remember is it was like some of the people who made Castle Rock were going to make an anthology show based around the Overlook and telling the story of different hauntings and scary stuff that happens over the years, which is an amazing premise and something that I desperately want. But that fell through and everything. So to have something that sounds similar to that with Welcome to Derry in the It universe, like that's cool. That's interesting. On the surface, I'm intrigued by it. But also, I kind of wish that would have just been part of the movies, because like the book has those interludes, the Derry interludes, where it tells different stories about like things over the years, that are directly influenced, like pieces of violence in Derry's history that are influenced by it and all that. And like I had this whole thought that like it would have been really cool if they would have done like like maybe even like an anthology film where they would have different, like in between It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, they would release this like anthology film or this collection of short films where like each short film would be depicting a different era of Derry, and each one would be like a different director or different creative team handling it, and like it would just tell like the Derry interlude stuff. And like that would have been really cool, but having this independent of the It movies, or like being, you know, a few years after those movies were released, and even with It Chapter 2 not really being that good in the grand scheme of things, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like, you know, it can rest for a little bit and come back in another 27 years in another iteration. But yeah, so I don't know, I'm intrigued, but not, I'm cautiously intrigued, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I think, you know, It Chapter 2 came out, what was that, 2018? 19.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, they, you know, I think if they were going to do this, they should have interlaced it with the other two movies, you know, maybe between them, or, you know, more than 3 years after the second one came out. I think the property of it had a nice resurgence with that movie, and you know, I think sure a lot of people went and read the book and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with what you said. I think they should just let that property kind of rest for a while. I mean, and my other point is there's so much Stephen King content out there that is begging to be adapted.
Absolutely.
Like it, I mean, I love it. I love the book. I liked the movies, especially the first one. I have a bit of a soft spot for the miniseries from the 90s.
Yeah.
So I think it has kind of had its day, if you will. I mean, let's just enjoy what's already there, and let's adapt some of this other stuff that's begging to be adapted.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's. I hope it's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Moving on to another piece of Stephen King news. Speaking of, King's work, there being a bunch of King's work to adapt. The hard case crime. Latest hard case crime novel from Stephen King, Later, which came out last year, is poised to be adapted for television by Blumhouse Television. So it'll be a limited series created by Rael Tucker and starring Lucy Liu. Yeah, so I don't know what stage of production this is in. I think it's just announced. It's you know, I'm kind of surprised that they actually have someone attached to star in it, so I'm sure she'll probably be producing it as well. But yeah, so I'm intrigued. We both really liked Later. Yeah. So
I think it'd make a great movie. I'm kind of surprised it's going to TV, but
me too, especially with, you know, Blumhouse taking it, which I mean, yeah, you would think, I don't know.
Does Blumhouse have any history on television? I'm not really familiar with.
That's such a great question that I am not prepared to answer. I'm sure that they do, and I'm probably
Mike would know.
He would. He would.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But they are doing, like, next month it's coming out. Firestarters, Blumhouse Productions.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's going to be on Stars or something.
It is going to be in theaters. I don't know if it's going to have a.
I think it has a simultaneous VOD release on Paramount or Star, some fucking thing.
Yeah. I thought it was just going to be in theaters and then probably like 45 days on streaming. But Let me check.
Maybe I'm wrong. I thought I saw a headline that said that it was doing both. I might be wrong though.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, streaming on Peacock. Oh, okay, I think you're right. Yeah, it's going to be in theaters and streaming only on Peacock May 13th. So in a few weeks. And we will get at some point, because I want us to do like Carrie and then Firestarter because they feel similar. But
okay.
So yeah, I think maybe next time we'll do Carrie, and we'll figure it all out. Yeah. So anyway, do we want to continue with news?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the next piece of news, which also briefly, a tangent. I feel bad because we didn't get an episode out before this happened, and I didn't get a chance to go see it, just because I don't know. It just kind of happened, and then I just didn't really feel like doing it. But the Historic Art Craft Theater in Franklin, Indiana, I think last weekend or the weekend before, did a Stephen King film festival where they showed Misery, Carrie, I think, The Shawshank Redemption, and one other movie, but in a kind of 2-day thing. So that was really cool. I wish I would have gone, but it just wasn't in the cards. But that's really cool. And the Art Craft Theater is amazing. Yeah. So anyway, moving on to the next piece of Stephen King news, kind of similar to the previous one. Stephen King's Billy Summers TV series in the works from producer J.J. Abrams. So reading the article, not long after we learned that Stephen King's Later is getting a limited series from Blumhouse, reports that Stephen King's Billy Summers is also getting a limited series. Let's see, Ed Zwick and Marshall Herskovitz will adapt with Zwick directing. Let's see. So J.J. Abrams' company Bad Robot is behind the planned limited series adaptation of the novel. Bad Robot previously entered the world of Stephen King with Castle Rock, Lacey's Story, and 11/22/63. So, yeah.
See, I can see Billy Summers working as a limited series.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I know this is just so... I don't know. There's no... It's too perfect for them to do this, but it would just be awesome if Paul Sparks plays Billy.
Oh man,
yeah,
that would be perfect.
Yeah, because he did the narration, freaking nailed it on Audible,
right?
He's already an established Stephen King actor because he was Ace Merrill in Castle Rock.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
I mean,
hopefully that
him as Billy Summers would be perfect, but him just doing any role would be good.
Oh, absolutely.
He's demonstrated how much range he has as an actor, and he reminds me a lot of like Gary Oldman, how he can just become a different person,
kind of disappear into a role.
Right. Physically, his voice can just change so much, and his mannerisms, body language, everything is just so... He's a chameleon. So.
Absolutely. Like, just thinking about him in, like, Boardwalk Empire playing just an annoying, like, not taken seriously gangster guy. And then that, and then, like, just, like, the way that he can be intimidating just on a vocal level on the audiobook for Billy Summers, and also as Ace Merrill in Castle Rock. It's it's really cool.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens with that. But the final piece of news, or the final piece of news I have is this was announced. I mean, this was back in this was in January that this was announced. We got an announcement about Stephen King's next book, which I know we've talked about it, Tiny. But Stephen King's fairy tale, King opens a door to a parallel world with new novel this September. It's God, I'm so excited for this. So the novel is titled Fairy Tale and is going to be released on September 6th, 2022. Here's kind of a plot summary. I'm not going to read the whole thing, But legendary storyteller Stephen King goes deep into the well of his imagination in this spellbinding novel about a 17-year-old boy who inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher for their world or ours. I'm not gonna. Well, I'll read the next paragraph. Charlie Reed looks like a regular high school kid, great at baseball and football, a decent student, but he carries a heavy load. His mom was killed in a hit-and-run accident when he was 10, and grief drove his dad to drink. Charlie learned how to take care of himself and his dad. Then, when Charlie is 17, he meets a dog named Radar and his aging master, Howard Bowditch, a recluse in a big house at the top of a big hill with a locked shed in the backyard. Sometimes strange sounds emerge from it. So, Tiny, how do you feel? Like, what do you think about, this upcoming novel from King, Fairy Tale?
The premise sounds like a little bit of a kind of a blend of like 11/22/63 and The Dark Tower a little bit.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Picking up those vibes for sure.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very, very excited for this one. Yeah, and in the final Gwendy novel came out in February, I think. I haven't read any of the Gwendy trilogy, but
yeah, me either.
We'll have to cover that at some point. But yeah, another big year for King. Yeah, I thought I had one other kind of like piece of news that I was going to bring up, but I can't remember. So okay. I think that's enough for news, though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, big things. I'm excited. So Tiny, we are very late with this, but this is our final novella review for different seasons. We previously did Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, and The Body. And it was originally intended that we would do this and it would correspond with each season. And so this episode was supposed to come out in December, but time got away from us. So sorry about that, guys. But yeah, we're finally here to talk about the breathing method. And the breathing method is an interesting novella because Different Seasons, as a collection of 4 novellas, it's notable because each novella, just about 3 of the 4 novellas, have been adapted into pretty high-profile films, like obviously The Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, and Stand By Me. So it's really interesting that the breathing method has never been adapted, and it's maybe not that surprising because it's just really of an out there premise. So yeah. So as normal, we're gonna do a non-spoiler and spoiler kind of review of the breathing method. Tiny, before we get into it and everything, did you have any history with this? I know that you had read Apt Pupil kind of independent from it, so I don't think you've read Different Seasons as a whole, but did you ever come across the breathing method? Did you have any knowledge of it? How did you come to the breathing method?
I have no history with it. I didn't even really know it existed because when you mentioned, I mean, I can't even remember how many times I asked you like, hey, what's the 4th novella called in Different Seasons that we're going to do an episode about? Because I didn't even really know it existed. I didn't know the premise. I didn't really know anything about it. So yeah, I have like no history with it. Yeah, I wish there was more to tell, but that's about it.
Yeah. I read the breathing method when I read Different Seasons for the first time. And like, I had always thought like, oh, it would be cool if like it was adapted. Before I had read it, I thought like, oh, it'd be cool if it was adapted because four novellas, 4 adaptations. But when I read it, I just realized like, yeah, this is very, very difficult to adapt. And in fact, it's interesting because Scott Derrickson, who has in June is going to come out with The Black Phone, which is based on a short story by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son. This year, it's coming out in June. but he, like in 2019, I don't know what the status of it is or anything, but he was attached to develop a film adaptation of The Breathing Method. So that's from 2019. I don't know. I doubt that there's anything. You know, any movement on it or anything. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah. So The Breathing Method is interesting for a variety of reasons, but it's also fairly. Would you say that it's fairly? Do you think that it's adaptable?
I feel like it's adaptable as like an episode of Tales from the Crypt, or I really just got like a Tales from the Crypt vibe from it, or like a segment of Creepshow or something like that, as opposed to like a movie. But I do think it has some supernatural elements to it. And I feel like if it were told as a very straightforward movie, without the supernatural stuff, I think it would be really fascinating, and it has some shock value to it. And you know, there's a huge weight at the end of the story. I think that could be really cool. Especially if you kind of take away the whole like meet at a club and tell a story premise. I think the actual story within the story is super meaty and could be expanded and could really have some really dramatic flair to it, and could be really good. But within the context of like if you adapted it as kind of a straightforward adaptation, I really see it as like an episode of an anthology kind of show.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you said that, because like I have long said several times that I would love for someone to take Stephen King's short fiction and create an anthology show where each episode is a different adaptation of a different short story from Stephen King's canon. And like I would love, like, that would be amazing. Like the limited series or event series that they did on TNT, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which I've talked about briefly on the podcast. But with Nightmares and Dreamscapes, I know that it's maybe not as well respected or anything, but that was an 8-episode anthology series with like that same premise and everything. But when reading The Breathing Method, I'm just so overwhelmed by the thought that, man, they should do that. Someone should make an episodic anthology show like Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side or The Twilight Zone, what have you, and make like the frame device of it. Like each episode is like a story being told from the perspective of someone in the club at 249B. That is the club, that's the unnamed club of this novella and The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. Like I would love that. I think that would be a really interesting concept and a good entry point for it. So I don't know, it would be really cool, but who knows if it would ever happen.
Yeah, it's definitely ripe for adaptation, I would say.
Oh yeah. So yeah, but I agree. I like this novella. I enjoy it. I enjoy the story. Before we get too deep in the weeds about it, it's basically about a gentleman's club where people tell stories, and it is kind of the focus of it is a story in which an aged doctor recounts a tale of a woman who is pregnant, and then tragedy befalls her, and a supernatural event happens amidst that tragedy. That's as vague as I can be, but it's something that it's interesting, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to compare it against the other different seasons novellas, but it is very much an outlier in this collection because it's wildly different. I mean, aside from being the only one in the collection that hasn't had an adaptation, obviously, it's the tone of it is so different from The Body and from Apt Pupil and from Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which isn't an indictment. It isn't a criticism or anything. It's just a statement of fact about the tones of these stories. And I kind of like it. I meant to reread the afterword that Stephen King has in different seasons, but I didn't get around to it. But I just think it's an interesting collection because we go through the paces of, like, you know, this intimate friendship story, and corruption story, and then we have this horrific thriller of this Nazi child story, and then we have this coming of age story, and then we have this out and out, like, slow burn horror story with supernatural kind of elements to it that is just, it swings for the fences in certain respects in context with the rest of the stories in this novella collection. But it is also just very much Stephen King. It's his storytelling prowess at, you know, peak prowessness. Yeah, it's really good. And that's another reason why I think that concept would work for an anthology show. Because it would be reminiscent of, like, you know, if you're a hashtag 90s kid like us, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like the Midnight Society and stuff. Like, it would be that same thing. And such a big thing about Stephen King's whole ethos is storytelling. Storytelling is at its heart, is at Stephen King's core. And, like, to have an anthology show that would be about storytelling as an entry point for his work would be just really cool. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel? So how did you feel about the novella overall? Like, kind of in broad terms and non-spoiler terms, how did you feel about the actual content of the novella?
I enjoyed it a lot, actually.
Nice.
I do think it's pretty objectively the weakest entry of the four novellas in this collection, but that's not really saying a lot, because
right.
The first three are just so damn good that it's hard to make, you know, I guess, string four of these together. But yeah, I think it's a little bogged down by the shell story, if you will. You know, this guy gets invited to this club from his superior at work, and we sort of see the actual story, like, through the filter of him, and he has, like, this character development about, you know, his work and his wife and all that, and it's just so odd that Stephen King chose to kind of include all that. Like, I didn't need character development. I don't even remember his freaking name.
Right.
Like, I don't need character development for him. You know, I feel like he's sort of our again, he's like our filter for this story, for the actual story. And I think this could have been a lot shorter, because I didn't need all that. And I think it detracted from the actual meat of the story, where Dr. McCann tells this incredible experience from his younger years as a doctor. That's what we really want to get to. That's the good part of the story. And you know, there's this kind of fun stuff at the end about the club that's kind of fun, supernatural little jab at the end there. And it's cool in and of itself, but it's kind of I didn't necessarily need it, I guess. I don't think it added a lot to the story. Again, it's more of a distraction than anything else.
Yeah, it's very much I don't know. It's basically, like I said, it's kind of like it's a slow burn story for sure, and that extra element to it with the club, and it's another example of Stephen King kind of stretching or flexing his storytelling muscle. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work as well. But what I kind of honed in on when rereading it this time around was that it is similar in structure to a very small extent to like the Russian nesting doll storytelling of like The Gunslinger, where it's like a story within a story. Like we have the story of the guy in the club and like kind of the background of the club and everything. And then we have McCarran's story about the breathing method and about Sandra, whatever. And then we come back to the club and everything. So I like the structure of it, and I didn't mind the kind of slow burn aspect of it in the detail of the club and everything, because that, I think for me, that really helped create this sense of ominous sense of kind of an ominous presence throughout the club. Like it kind of set the stage for me for the supernatural element that would come into play later in the story. So I feel like it kind of set the pieces up while also introducing this just really kind of cool sort of element to it, like the idea of this gentleman's club where they just talk and share stories and everything. And like that's such an intriguing concept, and I kind of like living in that world for a little bit. And then to bring us into the actual story of the breathing method, it kind of primed me for it a little bit better. But your mileage may vary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, and it is kind of classic Stephen King that it does get a little bit bogged down. I will agree that, him talking to his wife about the club and not knowing how to tell her about it, like that seemed a little bit superfluous. But I think really my biggest criticism of this novella is that the club at 249B doesn't really, like, I wanted this and want this to be a bigger thing in Stephen King's kind of whole deal, but it didn't take off, which is a shame.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fun premise, and it's kind of rife for his brand of storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I just think, like, man, it could be a show. It could be like they could have special guest stars who come in to tell a story and everything. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'd watch it.
Yeah. Do you want to go into kind of spoilers and actually talk about the details of the breathing method?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Or do we have any other things to discuss in non-spoilers?
The only other thing I'll say in non-spoilers is one thing I appreciate about the story is detail. Mm-hmm. Because there's another novella we're going to talk about, kind of in the same vein, and that one doesn't have as much detail. It's much more to the point. Yeah. And that's fine. I liked that story as well. But this one I think it sets the scene a little better. I like all the descriptions of the club. It's like an old school idea of like a men's social club. Yeah. Where dudes just go hang out and drink and smoke and play cards and read and talk about news. And it's an old concept that's not around anymore, really. Yeah. But it has this sort of almost like a romantic tone to it. It's something that when they talk about the good old days, like this is kind of something that's missing. We don't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. We don't. It has this social aspect that I think we've kind of gotten away from in modern times, if you will. And I love the whole men in tweed jackets smoking pipes and talking about war stories, and they're literally huddled around a fire like Indian tribes used to do, and that's how Indian tribes pass down their stories. It's an oral history, and this kind of has that vibes. It's very romantic is the word that comes to mind. It's like this kind of warm feeling of everyone appreciates a good story. And literally the idea of gathering around a fire and listening to a good yarn is like kind of an untouchable thing and a universal thing. And I think Stephen King painted that picture and like set that set up that setting like beautifully. And that's one of the better things about this story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's something that, like, that kind of whole aesthetic of like a gentleman's club and everything. It's really, it has a mesmerizing effect. Also, like it reminds me of, like there was an episode of the Twilight Zone from season 2. I can't remember the name of it. Back There, I think. But it's like this guy talking at a gentleman's club, and they're debating the merits of time travel and like what they would do if they could go back and warn people about the stock market crash and everything. And then one of the guys ends up going back in time and is in a position to prevent the assassination of Lincoln. Back There, season 2, episode 13 of the Twilight Zone. But anyway, it takes place at like a gentleman's club, and it does feel like that classic kind of like antiqueness, I guess, or there's a word that I'm looking for that I can't remember what it is, or I can't really place it. But like there's a level of old-fashionedness, I guess. That's pretty interesting.
Right.
Yeah. That I like it. Kind of that general aesthetic is something you don't really see these days. Not that it's really needed, but it's just there's something kind of romantic about it. Yeah,
it was a simpler time.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, we can go into spoilers now.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's a fun, a cool part of the story to mention.
Yeah. Would you want more stories kind of with that frame device of the club, or are you cool with, Stephen King doing a Stephen King thing?
Yeah, I'd be fully on board for it. Like I said, the other story we're going to talk about is kind of linked to it in a way, and I like that one maybe even more than this one. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we will go into spoilers for the breathing method. I'm going to play a little bit of music that I do not have queued up on the board, but I will edit it in post. But anyway, here we go. We are going to go into spoilers once the music stops. Spoilers for the breathing method. Right, so spoilers on for the breathing method. So Tiny, we didn't really talk about the actual breathing method story. This is just such something I love about it is that it is kind of its log line is like woman gets decapitated in an auto accident. A pregnant woman is in labor, gets decapitated in a taxi car accident, and gives birth and does like the Le Mans stuff. Le Mans. She does the 24 hours of Le Mans. No, she does Le Mans. Before she dies. It's really interesting. And what I love about it and the way King writes it is the way that he is just so procedural with it, and the way that he kind of explains it and goes into detail about like how the guy like kind of kicks the head and doesn't realize it's the head, and how it's gradually telling us like, oh, okay, this is what's happening and everything. So I don't know. How did you feel about that? And did you have any idea that that's the route that the story was going to take?
I didn't really. I didn't think it was going to come to that. I mean, I think there is some sense of impending doom, especially the whole thing where she pays her whole bill early on, and she comes right out and says she feels like she's doomed, I think, or something along those lines. So I mean, that's kind of foreshadowing. So I figured that was going to happen, but not in the way that it did. Right? I think that's. I think again the shock value of this is just pretty off the charts, but like in a good way. Like I think it's an amazing premise that a decapitated body gives birth to a baby, and like I'm sure within the realm of science that's impossible. But like weirder shit has happened. You know what I'm saying? Like truth is stranger than fiction kind of thing. Like you know, I'm not saying this has happened or that like. I feel like this is within the realm of possibility. Like, like the baby's crowning and the woman gets her head cut off. I think it's within the realm of possibility that baby still survives, and that in a way that body could still, decapitated body could still give birth to the kid. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor or anything, but like it seems within the realm of possibility that could happen. But obviously there's this supernatural element to this where the breathing method is being employed by the decapitated body. That's obviously fictitious, and it's a little beyond the pale. I feel like it kind of how do I want to say? I think it kind of jumped the shark, or it's a little too crazy kind of thing. I don't know, because I feel like the rest of the story felt very straightforward. You know, like even the premise of the social club, there's no supernatural element to that. There's no supernatural way it's like a miraculous pregnancy or anything like that. It's just very straightforward. And then all of a sudden there's this crazy supernatural thing. I'm not against it. And again, I think it was a really compelling story and I liked it. I loved the detail where he's like describing the whistling sounds of her neck, like breathing, like the trachea contracting and whistling with her breath, because I think there's a line that's like there's no mouth there to turn the air into words or something like that. I was like, fuck, that is dark. And like there's some great shit in there, but I just feel a bit uncanny valley, a bit of a bridge too far. I don't know, it felt a little out there, that it was the body was still breathing and all that. But it was still really cool. I still just really liked it. But yeah, you talk for a second.
Oh, no. Yeah. And that makes sense. Like that kind of uncanny valley sort of aspect of it, especially and I hate to keep harping on this, but especially in that kind of context of like the novella collection itself. Like there's nothing like that in the other stories, but I feel like the kind of essence of it, like I do feel like while there isn't anything really supernatural about the club or anything, there are like little bits and pieces. Like I think he talks about how he read like they had a bunch of books and everything of like poetry that he can't find anywhere else from someone, and like it has like that kind of like hint of an otherworldly kind of thing.
Yeah,
but again, that kind of, for me, it primed it for that kind of thing. But I do agree, like the detail of the breathing method and of like what happens in there is just so just crazy and audacious. Like you talked about the trachea and everything, like when she says the words to him, and like he says that he saw her speak that, but he heard it at the body because the vocal cords are there. Just like, I was just like, that is nuts. That is such an interesting detail. And I kind of really love it for that. Yeah. So
I think if someone adapted this to like a again like an anthology type show, use this for an episode, but just did it with zero supernatural and like basically at the end, instead of, the doctor comes upon the scene and her body's laying there decapitated, and then it goes into this breathing method thing and delivers the baby. As opposed to that, I think it would be cool if, again, just full straightforward, no supernaturality. Like the doctor shows up and there's been an accident and it was her cab, but she's still alive. And maybe she's got like a broken leg and she's giving birth right there on the sidewalk. And there's just chaos all around them and there's crazy shit going on. And then like literally as the baby's, he helps her through birth right there on the sidewalk. He's like, we don't have time to take her to the hospital. It's going to happen right here. One of those kind of things, And as that's happening, another car accident takes place or something, or maybe something happens and like a car flies through and literally as the baby's feet are like coming out of her birth canal, pardon the grossness of that, something like another car accident flies by and like goes over and literally decapitates her as she's finishing giving birth. And then like that would like just the shock of that and the horror of that, the horror of the reality of that, I think would be so pungent and effective. And you don't need any kind of weird supernaturality kind of thing where he hears the voice coming out of her detached head or whatever. You don't need any of that for this to be a fucking wild ass story. Right. Is my point. And I think if you were to adapt it, leave the supernaturality out of it, and it would be super effective. That's kind of how I would see it. Wow. If it was if I had the rights to this and I was going to adapt it, that's what I would do. I would just go straight forward with it because it's got enough crazy ass awesome shit going on that you don't need the supernatural side of it.
That's really interesting. Like I first of all, I love that idea that the decapitation happens mid childbirth or like toward the end of the childbirth, and then just the instantaneousness of that and the way that it would be completed. Like that's interesting, but I mean, I don't know. I agree to disagree. I would definitely go the supernatural route.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean,
that's interesting though. I do like that idea. Quite a bit. Interesting.
Another thing that I wanted to mention that I think was a cool choice for the story was in the moment when he's watching this headless body give birth to a child. Dr. McCann basically goes nuts. Like he says, as he's telling the story in the club, he says, I think I actually lost my mind in the moment. And it's to the point where like the nurse is out there trying to help him and he like keeps calling her Sarge and stuff like that. Like flashing back to when he was in the war and he was so close to losing his mind. Like that's the only way he can cope with it is to revert back to his time in the war. I really appreciated that because I feel like it's, you would lose your mind in that moment. Seeing
absolutely.
Something that fucking crazy would make you go nuts. That was a cool aspect and some good writing in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I love also just like the structure of the story. I know we talked about that in non-spoilers, but like I just really like how it's that slow build toward that and then just complete off the wall chaos. I just think that that's just a really, really good way to kind of develop the story or to ease us into just absolute chaos toward the end. Although I will say that both times I've read the story, I mean, like the chaotic nature of the big set piece, if you will, is really effective and really great, really awesome. But it makes like that the denouement of like the stuff afterwards, like in the club and everything. I like it makes me lose a little bit of interest. Like it like I'm already like I've already been told a really good story and like I'm still like in that kind of just audacious sort of like craziness. So that they kind of bring it back down for the resolution of the whole story, it just kind of loses me just a little bit there.
Yeah, I think when they go back to the club and the other character, the other main character, again, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
He's having his whole kind of epiphany thing where, the whole, there's books here that I've never seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And this the music and the jukebox and the pool table is a brand that doesn't exist. Like, that is a cool concept.
Yeah.
I like that concept, but it is so out of left field and really, it's not earned, and it's not, it's out of place. Like, it just came out of left field, and it's like, why wouldn't that have been, we need a third 249B club story.
Right.
And that could have been it, where like this dude is realizing that this is like this apartment or this club is like a, it's like a nexus of the universe. It's like another dimension. We have this weird, it's like the world of Roland Deschain is leading into ours, and there's all this weird crap from another dimension or another version of our reality. That'd be cool as shit, but it's just kind of tacked on to the end of this.
Exactly.
And it's such a miscue, I guess. It's really a shame. It's kind of it along with some other things make it kind of a messy story with
a little
like
bit.
It's good ideas, but they're just sort of unearned, or they're miscued, or they're just out of place. Yeah. So it's kind of a bummer, but
yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
And again, I kind of wish that there was more. I wish that there were more stories like 249B stories in Stephen King's kind of canon to flesh out that otherworldly kind of nature of it, and that the kind of supernaturality of the club itself. Because we just kind of get between these two stories that, to my knowledge, these are the only two stories that have anything connected to the club.
Yeah.
And I wish that there was more so that he could build that out. Granted, maybe, and I don't know why he hasn't or why he didn't do that or anything. But again, I mean, he does have the Dark Tower series that does the same sort of like kind of portal world things and everything. So, I mean, it's not like he hasn't worked with this type of thing throughout his career. So it's not like we're not missing a lot out of not having it. But I just think that it's on the surface, it's that interesting kind of romanticized sort of concept that I think could have been really explored into some interesting ways, and could be interestingly explored in a Castle Rock kind of way in a TV show, the way that Castle Rock is explored. But
right, yeah.
Do we have anything more to say on the breathing method?
No, I think that kind of wraps it up for me.
Nice. Yeah, same here. How would you rank the different seasons novellas now that we've covered all four of them?
Oh boy. I honestly kind of think my favorite is actually Apt Pupil.
Nice.
Shawshank Redemption would be a close second. The Body would be a close third. Like those three, and in my opinion, those three are just like interchangeable. Same. As far as, because they're just so damn good.
Oh yeah.
And then I mean, this is kind of tacked on at the end, a number 4. But it's, again, I think this is an interesting story. It held my attention really well. It's it's entertaining. It's cool. It's just a little bit a little choppy and a little miscued, a little messy.
Yeah.
But still worth a read, and I still did enjoy it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I'm trying to bring up where my ranking is on this, but I think, I mean, I agree. I agree. It is certainly a little choppy. That's a good word to kind of describe that, but also it just feels so different in a way. And it's not necessarily different. I mean, it is very much different, but, it's also something that, it's not as fleshed out and detailed as the other novellas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, but my ranking of different seasons is actually The Breathing Method is number 4. Number 3 is The Body. Number 2 is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. And number 1 is Apt Pupil as well.
Wow, nice.
So, yeah. But yeah, so I mean that's cool. It's good. Yeah. I guess that's our review of The Breathing Method. And we're gonna kind of round out the episode, I think, with a brief review of a short story from Skeleton Crew that has a connection to this novella. It's The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. It was originally published in the 1982 horror anthology Shadows 4, and was collected in 1985's Skeleton Crew. It's, I'll read from Wikipedia. Like the novella The Breathing Method from King's collection Different Seasons, the story takes the form of a nested narrative told in a strange club in Manhattan. I think it was a Dollar Baby. At one point it was adapted into a film. I don't know if that's feature length or short, but anyway, yeah, it is a story that's in Skeleton Crew. So Tiny, so the reason why I chose for us to review both of these in this is that with Different Seasons, each installment, each novella has its own adaptation, with the exception of The Breathing Method. And so like I was struggling to figure out like how we would do like a double review for The Breathing Method, because it was just so easy for us to do like Rita Hayworth and Shawshank and The Shawshank Redemption, The Body and Stand By Me, whatever. Apt Pupil, we didn't do the movie because of reasons, but still, like I wanted to do something special. So I was ecstatic when I was reading Skeleton Crew and I came across The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands, and I realized like, oh, this is the same club. Okay, cool. So, yeah. So, did you have any history with this short story, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, again, no history with this one. I didn't know it existed really either. I haven't read all of Skeleton Crew.
Mm-hmm.
I read a little bit of it, but I didn't get to this one. Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a better story here, but really no history with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here. I mean, when I read it, like I said, I was just surprised. Surprised that it had a connection to another Stephen King work. The story as a whole is unique. It's about a man who goes to the club. Is it to the club, or he just goes to? I don't think he's in the club. It's just someone talking in the club. But he's playing cards with a group of men and refuses to shake hands with anyone. And then when he makes contact with someone, he freaks out and leaves. And then from there, there's more information. There's more backstory and everything. And there is a sinister reason why he does not shake hands. Yeah. So how did you feel about the story overall? Like, and then we can kind of compare it to The Breathing Method later.
I think it's fun. It's a very straightforward. It doesn't have the messiness or choppiness of The Breathing Method, and I think it's much more straightforward, and I appreciate that about it. And again, just a fun, really cool idea.
Yeah.
For a short story. It reminds me a little bit of Stephen King's another novel of his called Thinner.
Oh yes, absolutely. I haven't read or seen Thinner, but yes, very much.
I feel like the whole kind of like the whole kind of like the idea of someone being cursed by like a witch doctor or some strange tribal religion where there's an elder who has this power. It's kind of an easy plot device
Yeah.
to apply to do some like crazy shit. But it also just works. You know,
Yeah.
it's simple, but it's an easy to understand premise, and you can do so much with it.
Yeah.
Like I actually read Thinner like a long time ago. I was probably like in high school, but I remember thinking like, oh, this is, you know, it's a little goofy, but this is a very compelling story.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can just do so much with that. You can do anything you want because it's because it's something we don't understand, or it's something that's so widely applicable that it's you can just do whatever you want with it, and that's why it's a good storytelling device. And in this story, it worked well. I mean, it's there's this kind of noirish investigative aspect to the story where, you know, the guy's going out trying to figure out what happened to this guy, and that, you know, you get these kind of little vignettes of how what this guy was like, and again, I appreciated the simplicity of it, and it's just a fun little story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think part of that that intrigue of like kind of like a different culture curse kind of thing, I think that also really plays into, I mean, frankly, like Western ignorance.
It's a little tricky. It's like a little xenophobic.
A little bit. It's like a it's playing on the kind of what could be construed as like closed-mindedness of like Western culture, like where we're ignorant of, you know, other cultures, so like they scare us. It's like it is playing into some kind of like prejudices and everything, and maybe in some forms it can be very offensive and everything, but in some others it's the kind of the same concept of just like, you know, folklore, like horror in like folklore and everything.
Right.
So yeah.
Is there also a bit of, I'm thinking another link here that we can draw, another parallel we can draw. I'm trying to remember in Misery, bit of a, I don't know if this is really a spoiler, but in Misery, Paul Sheldon is writing another book in his series for Annie Wilkes, and she gets mad at him because he starts that story out, and he's like, the character just kind of comes back, but she says it's like it's kind of unearned, and so doesn't he kind of employ something similar to this, where like a witch doctor brings her back to life or something like that?
I think so. I remember there being something about bees. Yeah,
that's right. So that's right. He that's what he tried to do first. I want to say he tried to say like, oh, she got stung by a bee, but it was actually just, it made everyone think she was dead, but she's not actually dead. And then she comes back, and she's mad because that's a cop out or whatever, you know. And then I think he changes it to where she gets brought back to life by a witch doctor or some kind of like something similar to that. If I remember correct, I was curious if you remembered exactly what happened.
Yeah, I don't, and it's weird because I've read that book so many times, but
right, same here.
Yeah, but I don't really remember. But yeah, it is something similar to that, I think.
Yeah. But and I think Paul Sheldon even says or thinks, you know, as the audience, we're, you know, seeing it through his thoughts, that like this is a simple way to do this because of kind of like the same things that I just said. Like it's easy, it's an easy thing to do because it's you can do so much with it. It has no limitations. You can do whatever you want. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, it's very adaptable. Yeah.
Well, just a quick thing. Another thing I liked about The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. I like the I like the how this happens. Like I feel like the dude who comes up and shakes his hand after the card game. It's it was just a fun premise because I feel like the guy is like hammered and he's like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And just like it's kind of like one of those things where you can't stop what's happening. It's like a train wreck or something, and it's like a slow motion train wreck, and this guy's like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And the guy, what was his name, Brower something?
Yeah, that was another thing, Henry
Brower.
Brower, which sounds a lot like Henry Bowers. From It, yeah.
But yeah, the description of Henry Brower, like the sheer horror when the guy shakes his hand, I appreciated that that context and that that description was really, really vivid. Like
it's really fun because it's this energy, the energy of it. It's like you don't it's not really read, or it's not really written necessarily like a traditional like Stephen King like ticking time bomb kind of thing. Like we're introduced to Brower and how he like refuses to shake hands. He gives like some kind of I don't know, an explanation like, oh yeah, I spent time over here and, you know, picked up some customs and everything, or got sick. I don't know. So I don't shake hands, like just kind of blowing it off. But like, we know obviously there's something else at play here. And so the way that the guy gets up to shake his hand and everything is like, it's this, like you said, this drunken kind of outburst, but it's also like of this like jovial, like, oh man, you just won so much money in this card game. Like, oh, hey, congratulations. And it's just so sudden and quick. And that shift in tone with Brower being like, oh my God, what have I done? Or what's happened and everything. It's really, I really like that aspect of it. And the brevity of the story. It's a very short story. And also, again, man, this would be a really fun episode of anthology television.
Totally.
Yeah, especially with the ending being what it is. I don't think we should really go into detail about the ending. Kind of keep that open for people to read it, but like it definitely has like a nice like sting at the end. That just feels like it feels like a campfire story. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It also has a bit of a I think I mentioned it earlier, this investigative kind of noirish mystery part to it after we've, you know, that was really satisfying. It was maybe a bit Deus Ex Machina kind of thing, but but not an egregious way.
Yeah.
Like
it was,
I don't think a Deus Ex Machina has to be like a, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, in my opinion. No. It can be an effective tool, you know?
Yeah. It was, I felt like it was a relatively organic way to get us the information that we need, and like to bring us that information in a way that is pretty compelling on its own as a dramatic kind of set piece. I kind of I enjoyed it. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Do we have any other thoughts on The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Should we start to wind down then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands, does this make you want to read more of Skeleton Crew or more short fiction or what have you?
Definitely. Yeah. Nice. I like how digestible it is and how, the serial nature or the, you know, just the quick nature of it is really fun. Cause we all, for the most part, we don't read a book in a whole sitting.
Right.
We spread it out, and so this makes it like, oh, this sitting I'm going to consume this story, and that's I don't have to worry about where I left off or any of that. So it's this reading different seasons and then this makes me want to explore more short fiction for sure. Nice.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna hopefully resurrect the Church of King and maybe dive into, I think Skeleton Crew is the next one. So yeah, I'm going to do that soon, I promise. So check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. But yeah, any parting thoughts for the podcast, or should we kind of close it out?
I think we should close it out.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And I don't know what we're doing next time. I think next time, did you want to start or kind of dive into Carrie and then do Firestarter after?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, with that, we're going to be doing Carrie the novel, Carrie the De Palma movie, Carrie the TV miniseries if you want to, Tiny.
Okay.
And then also the 2013 Carrie movie. And then after that, we'll do Firestarter, the novel, and the 2 adaptations now. Yeah. So that's what's on the docket for Tower Junkies. And now that we've finished different seasons, I also want to do another novella collection. So at some point this year, we're going to start doing a 4-part series on Four Past Midnight. And I'm very excited about that because there is some, like, 4 Past Midnight's an interesting novella collection because it is similar in structure or similar in style because it's 4 novellas, 2 different seasons, but it is horror. It is a horror collection, and there's some really fun, really cool stuff in there. Especially like the Langoliers. I'm super excited to talk to you about that because it's an example of Stephen King just doing like a love letter to one of some of his influences, in most namely the Twilight Zone. So I really dig it. So I'm excited for us to kind of dive into that eventually. But first up is Carrie and Firestarter. But yeah. Any other thoughts? Anything else we need to cover?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tiny, for joining me for this discussion, and as late as it is for different seasons. But yeah. Watch next time we're gonna do stuff. Check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for more content and everything. And I'm gonna start playing us out. And thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. So I moved. Yeah, that was an experience. Thank you for helping.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's cool.
I don't think I told you, or I don't know if you noticed, but like I was having like the worst asthma attack I've had in like 10 or 12 years.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, because like
I feel like such a dick. I
didn't want you to feel bad because like I should have known better.
Oh yeah.
Because normally when I come over to your place, I don't really have any issues. Like,
yeah.
it's
Was it strictly because of pizza and Clarence even?
No, I think it's because like in your old apartment, just all like you've had a cat there for 7 years or whatever, and like moving everything around and kicking up all the dander and that fur. Just like it was, I had to come home and use my inhaler for the first time. My inhaler had expired like 6 years ago.
Oh wow!
But it still worked fine. I was fine. It was just I haven't had that in like so long. It was so weird. Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't kill you. I'm so sorry.
It wouldn't have killed me.
Yeah.
But,
wow.
But yeah, like when we like after driving away from your old place for a while and like going to your new place, I was better. Like I wasn't like struggling or anything, but just in your old place, just kicking everything up. It was just man, it really set me off. It was weird.
Damn. I didn't even notice. Wow.
Okay.
What an asshole.
I didn't want you to feel bad.
No. Wow. Dang.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.